all just right. Scientific publishing made breathe. Connecting scholars with such ease. Shining bright with Glintplus trusted source. Social academic networking, of course. Training scholars in fields with ease. Journal publishing, unlocking keys. With Glintplus Global Solutions unite. Inspired by the journey day and night. Grateful for the path we've known. In the world of academia we've grown. From chemistry to biotech bright. Bending data, thrilling sight. Agriculture solutions galore. Glintplus opens many a door. Oh, the memories we made with glee. Quality articles, open access, we find the key. Grateful hearts, inspiration soar. Glintplus, you're the one we adore. We've known. In the world of academia we've grown. From chemistry to biotech bright. Bending data, thrilling sight. Agriculture solutions galore. Glintplus opens many a door. Oh, the memories we made with glee. Quality articles, open access, we find the key. Grateful hearts, inspiration soar. Glintplus, you're the one we adore.
Thank you very much, Ayomide, for that ad. Before I will invite Ms. Ayomide to read the citation of our guest speaker for today, I want to remind us of what we have just watched. That those are the various supports that Glintplus provide for researchers. We will expect you to patronize us. We have been seeing some increased patronage. Please publish with us, and you will not regret doing so. Our publication is accepted in every university in Nigeria. Meanwhile, I also want to appreciate our audience from other countries, Kojo Basil, and others from the diaspora. We want to appreciate your being here. Thank you very much. I will recognize some others when the time is available for me to do so. Meanwhile, for now, let me invite Ms. Ayomide, our technical person, to read the citation of our guest speaker for today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever part of the world you are. I am Ayomide Ayeno, and a team member of Glintplus, and I'm honored to be able to introduce Dr. Olayinka Yusuf today. So, Dr. Olayinka Yusuf is an associate professor of rural sociology and agricultural extension at the Department of Agricultural Economics and Extension Services in Kwara State University, Malete, Nigeria. His research interests are social change and diffusion studies, agricultural technology uptake and transfer, gender and development studies. He has about 60 published papers covering diverse development subjects in academic journals, conference proceedings, and chapters in textbooks. Dr. Yusuf is a recipient of several research grants, including the CODESRA, which stands for Council for Development of Social Science Research in Africa grant for PhD thesis writing, and also Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TET Fund, and National Research Fund, NRF. He has partaken in several multidisciplinary pro development research with funding at national and international level. This included the UKD FID sponsored projects like the PHE 643 and 758, where he served as the project assistant. He had a short stint with an international NGO, CIFA, as field consultant in 2021. He has postgraduate supervision experience, having graduated 7 MSc, 2 PhD students, and has served as an external examiner for MSc, MPhil, and PhD thesis at Ladoke Akintola University of Technology, University of Ibadan, and University of Ilorin, respectively. He has attended over 30 national, regional, and international conferences and workshops. He is a member of the Agricultural Extension Society of Nigeria, ASON, Rural Sociological Association of Nigeria, RUSAN, amongst others, and he is currently the editor-in-chief of the Annals of Social and Youth Studies. a publication of the International Development Network of Children and Youth in Agriculture, CYIAP program. Dr. Yusuf is the Research Development Network of Children and Youth in Agriculture, and he is also the research lead of the Artificial Intelligence for Sustainable Agriculture and Rural Development, AI for SAD Research Network, a research group that embodied researchers from diverse disciplines working at the intersection of AI and agriculture. The group recently won the Gender and Responsible Artificial Intelligence Network Brain Grant on the project focused on AI for Women in Agriculture, AI for WIA. And that's the citation of Dr. Olayinka Yusuf. Um, you can go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much, Aramide, for that. I want to thank every one of us for being part of us this afternoon. And I want to thank Dr. Yusuf Adlu, Director of Researchment, for inviting me to make this presentation. Um, Let me say my background that I'm going to be building up upon to make this presentation, has to do with the fact that, for over a decade or more now in my career, I've had opportunity of being reviewers to journals. I'm managing editor to some journals and also editor-in-chief, as mentioned in my citation. And I've been opportune, to read lots of research articles. Then, apart from that, also I've been opportune to, as project supervisor for undergraduate, postgraduate, masters, and PhD level. I've also had the opportunity to interact with students. So it is this background that I want to build on, based on what I've observed over time, so as to, make this presentation. So I want to begin based on that. So the topic, as we have been told, is effective techniques for data pretreatment, interpretation, and presentation in digital age. So I'm going to be introducing my outline. In my outline, I will first come with the introduction, explain what data is. Then after that, look at the types of data under that. Then I'll look at what, the why, and how of data pretreatment. Then at the same time, the what, the why, and how of data interpretation, and equally of data presentation, which are the three main parts of the presentation. So at the end of each of the parts of the presentation, I'll be posting two short multiple choice questions, which we would expect to provide the answers so that we can ensure that we are following through the presentation. I think the organizers will tell us where to drop our answers as we proceed when we get to that point. Then after that, I'm going to look at some computer packages for data handling. Then I will take us to some concluding reflections, and then finally, questions and answers. Then I must mention that I've received some questions ahead based on the platform that we all belong to. For those that are registered for this presentation, for this program long ahead, we all belong to a platform. Taking note of your questions, and I'm going to be addressing those first, and hopefully when others would come in. And then finally, I want to note that I've been given 25 minutes for this presentation. That's a very tough one for me, but I'm going to try my best to stay within the time limits that is given to me. So I want to say my time starts now, and in the next 25 minutes, we'll be going through this together. Okay, so I want to start with this. What is data? So I can basically put this as unprocessed information. When you have an information that has not been processed, that you cannot really bring out what is it in that information at a glance, then you can say that is just a data that you have. So it could be defined in a lot of ways, but one simple one that I'm going to bring to us is saying it refers to raw facts, figures, or observations collected or generated through various sources. The source could include experiments or surveys. So there are a lot of data type that one can have. For instance, now, if depending on if the data is originally collected or it is already existing data, it could be primary data or secondary data. So when is it the primary data? If you as a researcher, you are the one going to the field to go and collect the data you will need for your study afresh, then you are dealing with primary data. Then such data is the one you are going to analyze in your study, and you are going to present the results. Then that is primary data. But at times, you might want to make use of already existing data. We call that secondary data. For instance, data you can obtain from the websites like Federal Office of Statistics, MBS, National Bureau of Statistics, data that you can collect in all of avenues like that. They could constitute what we refer to as secondary data. Yeah, and when you collect data like this, you are expected to analyze them the same way you would analyze the primary data and then report them in your study. So that is when they will qualify as second data. So why am I saying this? From what we have seen over time, students would report when they are making their presentation that they are using both primary and secondary data. And when they mention the second data that they are using, they will be talking about literature review and also, literature review that data that I've gathered from literature. So you would ask them, are you going to, analyze this data set? So when you gather materials from journal, article, proceedings, or literature review, they are at best review of literature. They would not qualify as secondary data except you will be rigorously analyzing this data and then you will be reporting them your findings. So let us take note of this. And again, the data we talk about could also be qualitative or quantitative. So it's going to be qualitative, and when we are talking about unstructured data that could include text, images, or multimedia, then it's going to be quantitative when we are talking about data like the one that comes from survey. So these are the type of data we could have, and regardless of the research a person is undertaking, it could be historical research, ethnographic research, marketing survey, sociological research. Regardless of all of this research that one could be undertaking, what is important is what is the type of data that I'm dealing with. That is what is important. So because the type of data we talk about will cut across all of these disciplines or the research we have talked about. So data plays a central role in driving evidence-based decision making and innovation in the digital age. Now, so let's now move to data pre-treatment. So, as the name implies, pre-treatment. So this means that these are activities that you are going to undertake, that you are going to do before you start the analysis of the data that you have collected. And like I have on the screen, pre-treatment involves the process of cleaning, transforming, and preparing raw data for analysis. Don't forget the way I defined data previously, unprocessed information. So you are just getting it raw from the field. So there could be lots of duplicates, missing values, different formats of the data that I've collected. So you need to deal with all of this. Otherwise, you might not be able to get something so meaningful from your data set. So this is basically what data pretreatment is. Yeah. So why do we do this? This is essential. Pretreatment is essential because it lays foundation for accurate analysis and interpretation. Like I mentioned previously. So if you collect the data and some part of it are missing, so you cannot go ahead and analyze that data set. It could be misleading. For instance, again, your data set could contain what we call outliers. Outlier would be a kind of figure that could be very far away, either on the large side or on the low side with respect to data they have collected. So you would not just jump into analysis, but rather you have to ensure you deal with these kind of outliers or missing values that you could have in your data set. Otherwise, it could skew the results. And when we talk about skewing the result, for instance, let me give an example. You have a data set that have an outlier, maybe mean age of young individuals. Ordinarily, the lowest value could be maybe 18 and the maximum could be like 35. You can now imagine someone's age being recorded as 125. You wanted to input maybe 25, but you mistakenly imputed 125. The presence of that particular figure, which we call an outlier, would affect the entire, that data set with respect to that variable. And if you would not treat that, if you would not, maybe cater for that outlier, for instance, if you go ahead and compute the mean age of that data set, it's going to give you a wrong value. So that is why it's important. You must pay attention to this. So without proper pretreatment, subsequent analysis and interpretation may yield inaccurate or misleading results. Yeah. So how do we do the data pretreatment? So what we'll do is this. We can clean the data set. So by removing irrelevant or erroneous data points using techniques such as filtering or deduplication. When it comes to filtering, for instance, by the time you just, if you run your data analysis, for instance, you are going to run it in SPSS, for instance, which we are going to mention. So you could just try to see the values of all the data that you have input on the system. You would figure that particular one out, and it's important you just deal with it by removing it. You could go back to your questionnaire and then see what exactly you are supposed to have put and then put that. Another one could be handling missing values. So there are a lot of ways you could do this, but because of the shortness of the time, we would not be able to go into the practical details of all of this, but rather we will just give an example as much as possible and as short as they could be. So there is what we call mean substitution when there are missing values. So you could, you could run the main, you could generate the main of that data set, and after that, you could now go back to the missing data point and then put the main value, the value of that main into those missing points. So which would cater for that missing data. Then there could be standardization, which is converting data into a common format or a scale to facilitate comparison and analysis. You can imagine having, you might want to run a regression analysis, for instance, and one of the predictor variables or some of the predictor variables, could be income, which is, in Naira. And then you could also be talking about household heads, which is, the number of persons, and lots of other variables like that. So it could be necessary to standardize these to make sure that you have something common across so that you can make an effective comparison. So example of data cleaning, suppose a researcher is analyzing customer data for a marketing study. Before analysis, they should identify and remove duplicate entries and correct any inaccuracy in the data set. Then I've already given an example and explained how you can deal with missing values and also the case of standardization, which I would not repeat. Yeah, okay. So I'm sorry, I have to move a bit fast as I'm doing so that I will be able to cover the three major parts of the presentation within the time allotted to me. Yeah. Okay, so we have our two first questions on the screen. Ayomide, I hope you have instructed our audience where they can drop their answers to the questions. So the first one is, which of the following is a primary objective of data pretreatment? A, generating final research conclusions. B, enhancing data quality and consistency. C, conducting statistical analysis. D, communicating findings to stakeholders. So you should be able to drop your response on the chat box that will have been provided to you. So that's the first question. The second one is, what is a common technique used in data pretreatment to undo missing values? A, mean substitution. B, standard deviation normalization. C, principal component analysis. Then D, one-hot encoding. So you have had the questions, you have seen them. Drop the answers you consider okay, where you have been directed to drop the answers. So I proceed. So now to the second part of the presentation, data interpretation. So before I go into this, I want to say that for the interpretation and the presentation part, I would want to relate this to our whether when it comes to publication of articles or when it comes to a postgraduate master's or PhD student writing his dissertation. We'll get to a point we would want to write our what we call chapter 4, for instance, presentation of findings, and then we'll be doing results and discussion. So we would not be able to do interpretation except we have analyzed our data set. And one thing that is very important is that we need to understand what kind of analysis that we want to do, which is what I think I have to bring into this presentation, which should ordinarily be part of it, but it does not appear as one of the major headings as we have. So what determines the kind of statistical analysis we are going to do? So there is a maxim that I usually tell my students, and that is that the level of measurement of a variable determines the appropriateness of the statistical tool that one should use, to test hypothesis or to undertake analysis involving, the variable in the study. So for instance, now, if you want to conduct, a regression analysis, then your focus will be on your dependent variable. If it is measured, for instance, as a numerical variable, then you can be talking about simple linear regression analysis. But if it is as a nominal variable, that has different levels, you could be talking about what multinomial regression analysis. If it is a dichotomized variable, for instance, a yes or no, adoption or not adopted, and so on like that, you could be talking about binomial logic regression. So it is very important you understand this, because if that is not understood, then we might not be getting the best from the computer. We should not forget that the computer is garbage in, garbage out. If you run a wrong analysis, on a data set, the computer would not flag and tell you, no, wrong analysis. No, it will generate a result for you. So that is why it is important. You must pay attention to know that basis. So we'll now go to interpretation. Interpretation involves the analyzing and making sense of the processed data to extract meaningful insights. Yeah, so it includes you want to identify patterns, you want to identify trends, you want to establish relationships between the data, in order to answer the research questions or the objectives, in order to address the objectives. This is another emphasis there's something I also want to emphasize. All that we are doing in the pretreatment, interpretation, and presentation are going back to our research questions and objective. These are the things that we want to analyze and they want to provide answers to them. So we must pay attention, to linking our interpretation back to our research question. So why do we have to do the interpretation? Because we would want to bring out actionable knowledge from our data set. So you can imagine now that someone comes into a class and then, okay, let me say this, you have collected the data set and then you have about 100 students, in that particular primary data you have collected. And then you want to make a presentation about the age of these respondents. You now start reeling out the values of the age of all of them. So the age of the respondents are 15, 27, 32, and so on like that. It's going to become boring and monotonous that no one would hear anything. You can now imagine just using the mean value to summarize that data set and then use that as a means of interpretation. So it's going to bring out the significance very clearly, and then it's going to establish, the gap between the analysis and decision making, so that decision makers can easily see, oh, the mean age is 18.5. That means our respondents are essentially youth. Then we can know immediately what we want to do for them. So it is the interpretation that affords us the opportunity of bridging between the analysis and then bringing it into action. And then also it permits us to engage in contextual understanding. Now, let me say this. By the time we are doing our results interpretation, one of the things that the students do that are found over time that is not usually right is when students present their table, for instance, which we are going to come to again under our presentation. So they can just tell us that the result shows that there are 30% males and for instance 50% females, and then they will move to the next result. So this is not correct, because when you want to do your result interpretation, there are basically three things that you must do. One of them is that you present that data via a table or a chart, which we are going to see under presentation. Yeah. Then after that, you must, critically discuss that result. And when you are discussing it, but you must derive implication from that findings. So when you derive implication from that finding, then you take it a step further. You must be able to compare and contrast what you're finding, what you have found out. You discuss this in relation to previous studies findings. So when you do this, then you are actually, interpreting your data set, your results. But when you just present your results by giving us the mean value, for instance, or by just giving us the data, maybe through histogram or bar chart and things like that, and move to the next one, then you have not fully discussed it. You have not also fully interpreted it. You must compare and contrast with previous findings. That's part of interpretation. You must derive implication from your presentation in relation to your study objective, in relation to the main focus of your study. Students, again, are usually fond of doing this. When they present their socioeconomic characteristics, you will find them bringing a lot of, previous studies to buttress their finding, because they are usually very available, whether they are relevant or related or not. But when they now get to the main thrust of the study, you will find them wanting. So you must make sure you find relevant literature to buttress and discuss and interpret your results. Yeah. So how do we do this? We can do this through exploratory data analysis, using visualizations and summary statistics. I gave example of this in the previous slides when I said that someone just reading out the values of mean age of a respondent and someone just telling us the mean value and then standard deviation. So one has done better, while the first person just reading out the mean ages of this, the ages, of the respondent has not really done something meaningful. Yeah. So we use summary statistics to explore the characteristics of the data. And again, so we can also apply statistical tests like correlation, association. Correlation is going to establish association, for instance. And then, like I mentioned previously, you also need to understand when do you do correlation and when do you do regression analysis, because there is also that thing that you need to know, that correlation does not imply causation. So that you want to establish a relationship between variable A and B, and then you found out that they are correlated or they are related, doesn't mean that a change in A will lead to a corresponding change in B. So, and that is what regression is going to do for you, which is a thing of cause and effect. So time would not permit me to give examples that will illustrate this, but if during questions we have a lot of time, we can delve more into that. So domain knowledge integration, this is also very vital. And I've also, you must bring your presentation into the context of, of your study. You should not just discuss, haphazardly, but you must bring it into the context of your study. So for the exploratory data analysis, you could use scatter plot, histograms, box plot. To address some of the questions that we had gotten before the presentation on the general platform. Someone asked which analytical tool, which visualization tool is the best. So it will depend on the kind of objective you are trying to address and the kind of data set that you have, the level of the measurement. If, for instance, now you have a numerical variable, you can do an histogram. But if you're having a nominal variable, for instance, like male and female, you can do a pie chart or a bar chart. You can also do box plot, for those kind of analysis you could do histogram for. So the type of variable you have and the type of analysis the type of objective you want to address will determine the kind of analysis that you do. So look at this example. In a clinical trial, researchers can use t-test or ANOVA to compare effectiveness of different treatment groups and then interpret the results. Yeah. Okay, so let us quickly look at the question for data interpretation. So I want to believe the questions are still available to you. You can look at them and then provide the answers also on the same platform. So let me go to the third part. So for the presentation, I've been able to take as much as I had wanted to present on this along with the interpretation, and I will not belabor this again. But you must know that it is during the presentation, you are telling the story. You must ensure you make a compelling narrative that is going to captivate your audience in your presentation. So this is when you are going to tell them this is all that you have done, and you must be able to weave everything together. So facilitation, facilitate communication and engagement. Effective data presentation will enhance your communication and engagement with stakeholders, enable them to grasp key insights quickly and also intuitively. So yeah, the storytelling and also visualization techniques which I've talked about. So these are the questions for presentation. What is the primary purpose of presentation? We have the options that are there, and also which of the following is an example of data presentation. We have the options that are there. We can also respond to this as appropriate. So quickly before I finish up, so we are talking about digital age. So I would not expect you to want to do analysis at this stage, and then you will be cramming the formula for correlation analysis, and then be using that. The packages are available for you. I've brought 3: SPSS, R, and Starter. You might not be proficient in all of these, but at least try to be proficient in one, and then try to use this for your analysis. I have a concluding remark that also sheds some light on this. So when it comes to qualitative data, regardless of the type of data you are the type of research you are conducting, whether historical research, whether longitudinal, research, whether cross-sectional survey, depending on what you are doing, it is the type of data set that you have that will determine the analysis you are going to do and the package you are going to use for it. So when it comes to qualitative data, for instance, it could be pictures, it could be audio, it could be text files. You can use NVivo, you can use Max QDA, and you can use atlas.ti. You can read more about this. Now, so my concluding reflection as a final takeaway is this: you must always engage in data cleaning before analysis. Why? My presentation has already established this. Now, the second thing is this: you should know the statistical tool that is applicable in the context of your study. What do I mean by this? I would not expect every of my students to be able to know how to make use of R, for instance, or how to make use of Starter, or even XPSS, as simple as it might be. But what is important is that if you want to engage that statistician for your analysis, you should be able to know and instruct him. Oh, for this objective and hypothesis, I want to use correlation analysis. I want to use Pearson product movement correlation. And for objective 2 and hypothesis 2, I want to use simple linear regression. You should not leave the analysis and the tool that you would use to the mercy of the statistician. You should be able to know what is appropriate, even when you cannot operate or conduct it by yourself. The statistician can do it. So when this happens, when your result comes out, you understand your results better, and not that your statistician will now have to sit you down and then put into your brain what the result means, which you want to cram and then go and present, which will not be better for you, because your supervisors will know this, your lecturers will know this very easily. So you should learn to understand the result of your study analysis. I've taken that as well. And then you should also know variety of visualization tools for making compelling presentations. So I want to thank you very much for listening to me. I hope I've not rushed this too much, and we will be able to have some little time for questions and answer. If the instructor will permit me, like I mentioned, I've received some questions already. So while we are taking more, Ayomide, do you have your permission to proceed to answer some of the questions that are already coming before we commence the presentation?
Anyhow.
Okay, so let me just take one or two of them while more can come in. Yeah, so someone asked the question, handling handling corrupt data during field experiments, and then is data cleaning sufficient for handling corrupt data? So I want to start by saying what I understand as corrupt data is that data that has become inaccessible, or it has become corrupt, that you cannot access it again. So you might not be able to do anything to it. So what I must advise you, and this particularly happened to me when I was doing my PhD then, I had my data set and I could not just find it again. I just resorted back to the backup that I had. And that is a lesson. Always make sure you back up your data before you commence your analysis. That is one. Then two, if you are running your analysis in SPSS, for instance, you might want to do lots of, when you are doing the cleaning and then, doing some analysis, always save the initial data set, save it, so that by the time you do, make some modifications, you might not be able to have access to that previous one again if you do not save that initial one. Someone also asked, data pretreatment technique for historical research studies. So like I've mentioned, regardless of the study you're undertaking, whether historical research, whether sociological survey or ethnography, the data type that you have is what is important. If you are dealing with qualitative data, that is what's going to tell the type of analytical tool you are going to use. If you are dealing with quantitative data, that is what is going to tell the analytical tool you are going to use. So there are no peculiar, data analytical tools for historical surveys. For instance, you could go into history, for instance, and then get map of historical sites. You can use atlas.ti to analyze that as a computer-assisted qualitative data analysis software. You could also interview a village chief as a key informant to tell you the history of a particular community that you are studying. You can also use atlas.ti to analyze that key informant interview. So it's that type of data that determine what you are going to do, not necessarily the kind of study that you are undertaking. So in essence, I'm saying historical studies would not have their peculiar data, so to say, or peculiar analysis, so to say, I mean. Then how do you ensure data collected are reliable and accurate? Yeah, so this is where reliability comes in. When you are collecting your data, before you go to the field, you must endeavor to do what we call reliability test. What is reliability? You want to measure the degree of consistency of the research instrument. That if you use the research instrument today and you go back to the field to use it some other time in the future, it's going to generate the same thing for you. So you could use test retest method. You could use CUDA Richardson method, split half techniques to measure the internal consistency. So there are ways you can do this. And when you have done that and you have gotten the minimum percentage, maybe 70% for instance, you are good to go. You should also check the validity of your research instrument. Concurrent validity, construct validity, there are different types of them like that. You look at the one that are applicable to your to your study. Then you must check for this before you eventually go to the field to administer your questionnaire. Someone asked, what are the common pitfalls to avoid during interpretation and presentation in digital age? Okay, let me mention one or two of them. When you make your presentation, one thing is this, and students are also doing it. You would find a chart in a presentation, or you would find a table in a presentation, and you would not find any mention or any referral to that particular table throughout the prose. So this is not right. So if you have a table in your work, you must refer to it. To the extent of the map, you put your map in chapter 3, you must refer to the map. So that is one thing you must avoid. One other thing you must avoid again is this. You have your table, at the beginning of your presentation, or no, sorry, you have your presentation that covers 5 pages. You now go and put your table at the 6th page. It is too far away. It doesn't make sense like that. You must put your table close to the pros. Even when you have more than 2-3 pages discussion for your results, you can start with a page for the discussion, then put your table, and then go to the next page with your discussion. So it's usually better like that. Or you break down the table into smaller content so that you can also take your presentation and make it, in that similar format. Then how do you decide? Okay, visualization techniques. I've already addressed this. So I've been able to take all the questions that I had before the presentation started. So if there is any other one now that has come in while I was making the presentation, I want to hand over back to Ayomide so that I can also take those within the last few minutes we have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I want to appreciate Dr. Yusuf for this wonderful presentation. Gentlemen and ladies, I'm sure you agree with me that it's been so wonderful. I can see how he was struggling with time to ensure that he explained every possible thing. We quite understand the tasks are so big, and it's not something that can be compressed within the few minutes that we have done. I'm also happy that you have taken the next session, which is the question and answer. However, I think it's important that we give opportunity to those on ground in the house to ask questions. Please, I immediately direct people on how to and on how to put their questions forward so that we can take them within the little time remaining for this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, we are always very conscious of time and we don't want to exceed our time. However, one of the things that I want us to look at while the presenter will be looking at the question that is being projected is the reflection that he gave us. And one of them I want to re-emphasize. He said, I summarize it as, if you don't know where you are going, there is likelihood that you are taken to a destination that you don't expect. And that is why we should be familiar with some of these instruments, with some of these analytical tools. Because if you don't know it, most of the time, statisticians that are not very experienced will just give you anything. And I hope that we all learn from this and have an idea of where we are going. So without wasting time, let's
Yeah,
allow
okay.
the presenter
Dr.
spend
Fadlu.
the least possible time on this
Okay.
question.
Dr. Fadlu, thank you very much, sir. Can I answer the one on the screen?
Yes. That's the one you have.
Okay. How do we recognize which type of data tools to be used for our research question? Maybe I will reframe this. The type of data analytical tool, right, to be used. Yeah. Okay. So if that is that, I had already covered this during the presentation, and that is why it's that your research question that will guide that data analytical tool. Let me give an instance. You are looking at, is there a significant difference between adoption of male and female of a particular maize variety? So you cannot be talking about regression analysis for that. You are looking at difference, and there are tests of differences. It could be t-test, it could be one-way ANOVA, it could be two-way ANOVA, analysis of variance, if you have two levels of the categorical variable. Please, Researchment as a group, there is this chart that summarizes this. Please make it available to our audience on the platform that streamline and guides to when to use what statistical analysis. That can really be of help to them. Sorry, I didn't pick the second
Please
one.
go back to the previous question.
Yeah.
Go back to the previous question. And I hope Dr. Yusuf will help us with this,
Okay.
with the table you just mentioned.
Yeah. Okay, I can send it across. So which data analytical tools
can we use for
Which data
investigative research?
analytical tools can we use for investigative research? Again, you are going to define what in by investigative research. I try to simplify this in the presentation. Break, break down whatever research you are doing into the type of data that you make use of in that research. So maybe I will ask the question here back. In your investigative research, which kind of data do you encounter? They will either be qualitative or quantitative. And when they are quantitative, we have mentioned the type of statistical, the packages we can use for them. So depending on the type of quantitative data that they are, you could have quantitative data that are numerical, you could have quantitative data that are categorical, in which case you use chi-square analysis, as test of association. So the question is broad. When you say investigative research,
Go to the next one.
what are the type of data you are dealing with? So how would you treat a weak data in SPSS under version 6? Well, I wouldn't know at what age we will be talking about SPSS of version 6. There is SPSS of version 25 now. So except if I'm not getting the question very well, then again, I also do not understand the concept of weak data. Maybe Dr. Issa got that. I don't know what
I think the question is, I think the question is ambiguous. So if we don't have another one,
yeah, it's ambiguous. So
we are running short of time. Can we look at it? This one from
okay.
Theophilus?
Yeah, okay. How can you master the art of statistical analysis? The straightforward answer is you master it by repeatedly doing it. You just keep doing it and doing it. You don't learn a package except you know how to do it. Let me give you this as a parting shot. As a postgraduate student, then I usually tell my colleagues and my students, of course, undergraduate students under me, that people used to think this guy knows SPSS. I thought I don't know it. I can only say I know 5% of SPSS, but I know 95% of what I need for my analysis, which is what's important to me. So you might not know everything, but when you know adequately what you need for your study, then you are okay. So the more you practice, the more you know how to do it, and the better for you.
Thank you, Dr. Yusuf. And that's a very good place to leave it. Don't attempt to know everything, but know what you actually need. Thank you very much, Dr. Yusuf, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr.
Your very, very good concluding remark. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very, very far behind time. To me, anyway, I think Dr. Yusuf has challenged us that we have to start looking at extra 20 minutes for this for this our webinar. We want to thank you very greatly. And on that note, I have the honor to present to you this certificate.
Can I clap?
Sincerely, yes, you can clap, and then the audience too can clap for you.
Let the audience clap for me too.
Please be on your feet so that you can receive this certificate. Thank you. Yes, this certificate of appreciation is presented to you, Dr. Olayinka Yusuf,